My name is Michael Reed. I am 42 years old. For most of my life, I did not exist in people's eyes. I walked the same streets every day, but no one remembered my face. I slept on cold sidewalks, behind closed stores, and under broken staircases. I waited until the next morning. I waited for 3 days. They never returned. Later, I understood they didn't leave me because they hated me. They left me because they had nothing left to give. From that day on, I belonged to the streets. I learned to read by collecting old newspapers. I only finished first grade, and I often thought I was stupid, but I made one promise to myself: no matter how hungry I became, I would never steal, and I would never hurt anyone. Winter nights were my enemy, and hunger was my closest friend. I was homeless, invisible, and forgotten. I don't remember much happiness from my childhood. My parents were very poor. We lived in a small, broken wooden shack on the edge of the city. When I was 7 years old, my father took me to a crowded train station. He told me to sit on a bench and wait. His voice was shaking. He gave me a small orange and said they would come back with food. I waited until the station lights turned off. Growing up without a home teaches you many lessons. I learned which alleys were safer at night. I learned how to survive on little food. I worked any job I could find, lifting heavy boxes at markets, washing cars, cleaning trash. My hands were always cracked. My back always hurt. But I kept going. People shouted at me. "Go away. You smell. Get a job." They never asked my name. As years passed, hope became quieter. I watched people rush home to their families while I searched for cardboard to block the wind. By the time I was 41, everything I owned fit inside a plastic bag. My home was a single cardboard box behind an old bakery. That winter was the coldest I had ever felt. Snow covered the city like a white grave. The wind cut through my clothes like knives. My stomach burned with hunger. That night, I found a small piece of dry bread in my pocket. It was all I had. I sat behind the bakery, holding my coat tight around my body, whispering to myself that morning would come soon. That was when I heard it, a soft cry, weak and shaking, like a wounded bird calling for help. I followed the sound carefully. Near a trash bin, I saw a small boy, no older than 6 years old. His name was Ethan. He wore only a thin sweater, soaked from melting snow. His lips were blue. His hands shook uncontrollably. "I can't find my dad," he whispered. "I'm cold." I looked down the empty street, hoping someone would appear. No cars. No people. Just falling snow. The storm grew stronger, and the wind howled like a wild animal. Ethan looked at me with tired eyes. "I'm hungry, mister." I reached into my pocket and felt the bread. My stomach screamed at me to keep it. But when I saw his shaking body, my decision was already made. I broke the bread and gave it all to him. "Eat slowly," I said. "You need strength." Then I opened my cardboard box. "This is our castle," I told him softly. His face changed. He smiled for the first time. I wrapped him in my thin coat and placed him inside the box. I sat outside, blocking the wind with my body. Snow covered my back. My fingers went numb. I stayed awake all night, whispering his name again and again, afraid that if I slept, the cold would take us both. Just before sunrise, flashing red and blue lights filled the alley. Sirens screamed. A man ran toward us, his face pale with fear. "Ethan," he shouted. The boy jumped out of the box. "Daddy." The man pushed me away, thinking I was dangerous. I fell into the snow, my body weak and frozen. Then Ethan cried, "No." He saved me. He gave me his food. He stayed awake all night. The man froze. He looked at the box. At my coat on his son's shoulders. At my blue skin and shaking hands. His name was Jonathan Cole, a powerful businessman. Tears filled his eyes. He wrapped me in his expensive coat and called an ambulance. As they lifted me, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, warmth and human touch. In the hospital, I woke up under white blankets. Jonathan visited me every day. He didn't just say thank you. He listened to my story. He respected me. You protected my son when you had nothing, he said. I want to give you a chance. Jonathan offered me a job as a security guard at his company. I was scared. I told him I couldn't write well. I told him I wasn't educated. He smiled. We can teach skills. We can't teach character. I worked harder than anyone. I arrived early. I stayed late. I studied at night. I learned to read properly. I learned to use a computer. I treated everyone with kindness because I knew how it felt to be ignored. One day, I stopped a man from stealing food. Instead of calling the police, I gave him work and a meal. Jonathan saw everything on camera. He nodded quietly. Years passed. I earned promotions. I earned trust. I earned dignity. 5 years later, Jonathan called me into his office. Michael, he said, I want you to manage our charity program for the homeless. I looked at my hands. They were no longer dirty and broken. They were strong. That night, I went home to my small apartment. I touched my bed, my kitchen, my life. I still keep my old cardboard box folded in the corner, not as pain, but as a reminder. I am no longer the abandoned boy at the station. I am no longer a ghost. I am proof that kindness can change destiny. Never judge someone by their clothes. Sometimes the poorest people carry the richest hearts.